All of us here are working in the field of mental health. The topic that I would be sharing my insights with you is about domestic violence. Gulzar, I think most of us know him. My favorite poet and a lyricist. One of his poem about a weaver, Julaha. Okay. मुझको भी तरकीब सिखा मेरे यार जुलाहे. तरकीब is idea or some skill. मुझको भी तरकीब सिखा मेरे यार जुलाहे. अक्सर तुमको देखा है जब भी कोई तागा बुनते धागा टूट जाए या ख़त्म हो जाए. जब भी वीवर वो बुनता है, जब भी कोई तागा बुनते धागा टूट जाए या ख़त्म हो जाए, सिरा कोई जोड़ के उसमें आगे बुनने लगते हो. तेरे इस तागे में लेकिन एक भी गांठ गिरह बुनतर की नज़र नहीं आती हमें. मैंने तो ज़िंदगी में एक ही बार एक ही रिश्ता बांधा था, लेकिन उसकी सारी गिरहें आज भी मुझे नज़र आ रही है मेरे यार जुलाहे. मुझको भी तरकीब सिखा मेरे यार जुलाहे. So that is what counselors have to do. And especially when it comes to an issue like domestic violence, spousal violence, this is what we have to do because it is a very skillful act. We have to be skillful and strategic without losing our integrity. That is the challenge that we have all the time when we work with. Why I am saying so, I'll come to that. I'll just share with you my journey about this issue in 5 minutes. I was a child, I was born and brought up in Mumbai. And when I was a kid, it was like 1971, I was 10 years old. It was a time of Indo-Pak war. And blackouts and sirens used to be a kind of a usual thing for all of us. And we were kids, we used to, it was a kind of a fun for us. At the same time, we were scared what will happen to our Mumbai and whether we will be bombshelled and all those things. At that time, I thought that violence is something in the farthest periphery of geopolitical borders, somewhere in the remote periphery of geopolitical borders. I never thought that violence is something which is a part of our life, and its various forms, from fatal to subtle, are part of our life. I never thought that as a child. But as I started growing up as a girl in a typically patriarchal society, I started realizing not the violence, but certain forms where I could see power control mechanism, inequality very subtly being functional in everything that we did. Some things that I as a girl was allowed to, not allowed to, lot of things. And then slowly I started thinking about it, but of course didn't have any idea about what it is. Patriarchy was not a word that I knew of then, but something that I started feeling. Then I did my medicine, practiced medicine for 10 years, then I did my master's in clinical psychology, and after that started practicing and working in the field with lot many NGOs also. Okay, and there I had really an encounter with this issue where I could see various forms of violence. Okay, and the question then normally that would hit me was, why doesn't she leave? Like initially I was also working in the field of de-addiction, and we used to, me and my colleague, we used to go to the communities and talk to women there, and because that community was had a very high percentage of alcoholism and addiction, and so violence was a routine form there. So we would go from door to door talking to those women, and one day, like I was just a beginner then, had no clue, and as I said, this whole thought of why doesn't she leave was so much bothering me. And I just happened to ask that one lady, why don't you leave? छोड़ क्यों नहीं देती हो? So she said, in her words, I'll just say कि मैडम, एक कुत्ता अगर दरवाजे पे बांधा हो ना, तो बाकी के कुत्ते चुप हो जाते हैं, चुप रहते हैं. Okay, so that was something which hit me, and that was a real truth for her. कि एक हस्बैंड भले ही वो एडिक्ट हो, वो मारपीट रहा हो, काम तो नहीं करता, काम तो ये करती है, पैसा ये कमाती है, the only diet she gets at night is a good beating by her husband, and yet she says, because then she says अगर उसको छोड़ के मैं जाऊंगी ना, तो ऐसे 10 कुत्ते आएंगे, और 10 कुत्तों से मुझे वो ही सहना पड़ेगा जो एक से सह रही हूँ. And that's where it hit me that what it is. What is it? How do really women arrive at their decision about an abusive relationship? I was working with the NGOs in the rural and semi-urban areas in and around Pune. And normally, the assumptions are women don't come out of their abusive relationship, A, because they are not aware of their rights. They are clueless about it. They have no idea about what the law is. They have no access to that. Then they are economically not self-reliant, and they have no social support. So all the projects that I could see being designed by various organizations were revolving around these assumptions, making them financially self-reliant, arranging workshops or lectures for them to make them aware about the law, PWDVA, especially the one that got passed in 2005. So making them aware of that, making them aware, talking to them about their rights as a woman, talking to them about patriarchy and all those things. And so everything, all those inputs were focused around that. And while having my private practice in the city, urban area in Pune, I could see many highly qualified professional women, well literate, self-reliant, economically very much self-reliant, powerful, knowing and having access to all the legal system. And for more than the support, social support, there was a case where there were many cases where the parents used to call me and ask me, have we gone wrong somewhere in our parenting that our daughter is putting up with so much of a violence? So it was much beyond a social support. And then I still got confused, okay, what is happening then? If these are the assumptions, that these are the reasons why women continue to stay in an abusive relationship, then these are the pictures which are totally 180-degree opposite from what I was saying, what those assumptions was. So sometimes the woman would leave the abusive relationship because there were children. Sometimes she would stay in the relationship because she had children. Even the intensity of the violence was not one-to-one related to her decision about the abusive relationship. Then what is it? Having support, not having support, economical independence, nothing seemed to really help her to arrive at a decision about her abusive relationship. And I was really seeing this around me, and I was really, really haunted by this question, that what is really happening and how do women arrive? And that was the arrive at the decision. Now these, what I can say, these informations or these legal supports and everything, they help women after they take the decision. So these things help them in implementing the decision. But I could clearly see that those were not the factors, or those were not the inputs which were helping her. It was happening with her own understanding and the meaning that she gives to her suffering. And that's how she arrives at it. Okay, that was the very reason why I decided to take that as a topic for my PhD. Because I could see, I had read about many papers, research papers. Every time it was about the causal connections, patriarchy being attributed to, all those things. In NGOs also, that used to be a common phenomena where the social workers, if they are working with a survivor of a domestic violence, they would mobilize practically every resource that they can Okay, and then it would be a last concluding session, and the woman would say in Maharashtra, in Marathi, "Tai mala नांदायला जायचंय. I want to go back to my husband's family." Okay, and then everyone would get frustrated. कि अरे इसको तो ये छोड़ने का ही नहीं था, इसको ये नहीं करना था. Okay, they used to feel that they are taken for a ride and all those things. फ़ायदा तो उठा लिया, ये कर लिया, हम लोगों ने इतना किया, ये किया, और लास्ट मिनट में इसने बोल दिया कि I want to go back. Okay, to the extent कि बाद में अगर वो चल रहे हैं, so she would change the side of the road. Okay, so that was a common experience of social workers who were working in those NGOs, working in the rural and urban areas as well. So as I said, that was the reason why I decided to take that as a topic for my research, because I really wanted to know what is really happening with this issue and how women really give meaning to their suffering, how do they negotiate with the reality, and how do they arrive at the decision. Okay, so as I said, I knew that these external reasons are definitely not the cause, don't have the causal connection with her decision. Then what is it? So I decided to use a psychometric test. I think all of you know that TAT, thematic apperception test. And the scoring pattern that I decided to use was social cognition object relation, which is a, in that sense, recently developed way of scoring TAT stories and also personal interviews. Okay, so when I got to know about the system, I wrote to those three psychiatrists who had developed this scoring method, and then I asked them whether can I use it for studying domestic, in the issue of domestic violence, whether can I use that, and has it been tried in this issue and in India. So then unfortunately it wasn't tried before. I don't know the current situation, but then one of them agreed to guide me and monitor me so that I would do the scoring, send it back to her, Michelle Stein. He happens to be in Boston, and he agreed to check the scoring and give me the feedback. Okay, and then he also noticed certain things surprising, which were quite surprising. Rather than talking about, so there were 8 parameters, and one of them was self-esteem. Okay, and to my surprise at that point of a time, intuitively all of us, what we have been thinking and whatever understanding that we have is like domestic violence is always associated with anxiety and depression. Now when we talk about depression, obviously low self-esteem probably is an essential prerequisite for the recipe of depression. And to my surprise, in most of the 99%, more than 95% of the cases, I found self-esteem high, to be scored high. Now that's where I started thinking about it. It was because it was very counterintuitive. So what is it? Why that self-esteem is so high? And that's what I would like to share with you. So as we see here, violence is primarily an act emanating from the frame of thought on the part of the actor also and the survivor also. But what is important here is violence enacted is but a small part of violence lived, experienced, represented, and interpreted. Why it is important to understand that, I'll share with you. Once I was taking a training with counselors from MP, okay? And those counselors were working definitely on this issue of domestic violence, okay? So I asked them one simple question, which I have been repeatedly asking other counselors and social workers also, was that we have grown seeing these incidences, experiences in our family, around, in the community, with sister somewhere, or our own experiences. So we have grown with that. Now you have to tell me कि इसको हिंसा ये लेबल आपके मन में कब लग गया? So they shared lot many stories of theirs wherein बहन को बच्चा नहीं हो रहा था, उसके लिए उसको मारपीट हो रही थी. मेरी बहन को मैं मारता था, पीटता था अगर वो देर से घर में आती थी, एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स. एंड व्हेन आई आस्क्ड देम कि इसको हिंसा ये लेबल कब लगा आपके मन में, आपके दिमाग में, और तब तक आप इसको क्या कहते थे? ओके, सो द कॉमन आंसर दैट आई गेट मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स इज दिस इज द वे इट इज. और हिंसा ये लेबल कब बन गया? तो जब हम ये काम करने लगे, जब हमने कम्युनिटी में जाना शुरू किया, जब हमने ये सब इनपुट्स लिए, जब हमें कायदे के बारे में पता चला, तब हमें लगा कि ये जो हो रहा है और हो रहा था ये हिंसा थी. Otherwise, the meaning that they had given to it was that's the way it is. And that's the reason why we need to understand that violence enacted is but a small part of violence, lived, experienced, represented, and interpreted. So what happens with domestic violence is it shatters. Okay? What does it shatter? It shatters our image of a stable society. It is not about the legal existence of the marriage, but it is more about the familial love. Okay? See the paradox. The relationship which is not stable in itself is supposed to give stability to the society. That's the paradox. Because relationship at any cost. Till last generation, I always say that getting married was enough of a reason to stay married. Permanence, ये सब था. Those were the convictions that is how it is. That is how it should be. 2 days back, I was talking as a panelist, and it was about relationship and relationship issues. तो मैं बोल रही थी कि if you go back to the literature 50 years back, just the literature, you would see romance and passion as a part of extramarital affair. Never was a part of marriage. Marriages were more supposed to be, as I said, permanent, stable, more duty bound. More of safety, more of security, stability. अब के रिलेशन में जो रिवोल्यूशन आया है उसमें स्टेबिलिटी भी चाहिए, सिक्योरिटी भी चाहिए, सेफ्टी भी चाहिए, इंटेलेक्चुअल कॉम्पेटिबिलिटी भी चाहिए, इमोशनल सपोर्ट भी चाहिए, रोमांस भी चाहिए, पैशन भी चाहिए, एंड दैट टू फ्रॉम वन पर्सन. सीरियसली? So, just the digression bit, but then coming back to, so these are the assumptions with which people enter, and this is what really plays in our mind, and that's where this, okay, so as I said, issue is not the survival of the legal marriage, it is more about the familial love, because it is about myself, right? We are collectivist society, and our self is like what I can say, the idea of self in our society, collectivist society, is relational self. It is never an autonomous, well-bound self, where the idea of human rights emerged at the first place. See, if you really conceptually look at the idea of human rights, it has to have that self which has the boundaries which are well defined, which is autonomous, which is an agency capable of making choices. Okay? And that's where the idea of human rights comes into picture. And I always question, as a counselor and a psychologist, how does it apply to a collectivist society where the idea of self itself is so relational? The boundary line between self and the other is so diffuse. हम ट्रैवल कर रहे होते हैं तो 5 मिनट में बगल वाले को पूछते हैं कहाँ से आए हो, कहाँ जा रहे हो. Okay? And in most of the Western countries, 10-10 बरस एक साथ काम करते हैं लेकिन पता नहीं होता है घर में कौन है, क्या है, कुछ प्रॉब्लम है या नहीं है. I'm not saying but that's not how we are. We connect, we want to connect, we are products of. So coming back to understanding domestic violence, this is where I started to draw the meaning out of it कि क्या हो रहा है. So it is always a discourse and a disposition. Now the combination of the discourse and our disposition results into creating a meaning out of what's happening around us. Experiences सबको आते हैं ना. All animals, birds, everyone gets experiences. But human beings are the one who essentially give meaning to experiences. So that is essentially a human phenomena. तो ये meaning कहाँ से generate होता है? There is a discourse. Now the strong discourse that we have in our country, or in most of the Asian countries as well, is patriarchy. Okay, now that patriarchy is a discourse to everyone in the society. And that's where we need to understand कि हम है कहाँ, वो डिस्कोर्स क्या है और वो क्या बताता है. सो ये डिस्कोर्स कहता है कि एक तो व्हाट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट्स गुड लाइफ. नाउ हैविंग गुड रिलेशंस, हैविंग गुड फैमिली रिलेशंस, दीज आर स्पेसिफिकली आर द इंडिकेटर्स ऑफ व्हाट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट्स गुड लाइफ. ओके, सही गलत की बात नहीं है, लेकिन दैट इज हाउ वी बिलीव, दैट इज हाउ वी थिंक, दैट इज हाउ वी मेक चॉइसेस. Another thing is, there is a discourse about who to be and how to be. Okay, I'm just talking about the binaries, the man and the woman. I'm not getting into all the other gender types, but I'm just talking about the binary. But the patriarchy definitely gives you an input about who to be and how to be. Okay, what it means to be a woman, what makes you woman enough. What are the qualities that normally that are talked about? Endurance, sacrifice. Women's Day जब नजदीक आता है तो उसको strength बोलते हैं. All those glorifications of being a woman, but then if you look at those things, they are just the criteria, they are the stereotypes, which are not just the ideas, but they soon form the criteria for desirability. To call me woman enough, I have to have this. Okay? And for man, same thing. He has to be courageous. He cannot be sentimental. He cannot express his emotions except anger. No soft emotions. He has to be really stand firm. He has to be the breadwinner. ये सब उसको बता दिया है to be man enough. Now this is something which forms our internal belief system, and that's where the self concept gets formed. हाँ, हमें लिवर होती है, लंग्स होते हैं, हार्ट होता है, वैसे सेल्फ नहीं होता है. सेल्फ कंसेप्ट फॉर्म होता है with our interaction with the environment. And what are the social messages that we are getting to be man enough and to be woman enough are these. Now that's where is the causal connection, why I found self-esteem high in the survivors of domestic violence. Now if I am almost reaching or fulfilling all the criteria for ideal womanhood, who's putting up with all that violence, who's enduring all that violence, still holding the family together, still not shying away from the responsibilities and the duties that I have as a daughter or as a mother or as daughter-in-law, जो भी है, why would my self-esteem go low if I'm reaching or I'm fulfilling all the criteria for ideal womanhood? Okay, and that's where again is the issue. Whenever women come to a counselor or a survivor comes to a counselor or an NGO or a social worker asking for help, what are her expectations normally? आप उनको बोल दीजिए, आप उनको थोड़ा डरा दीजिए, धमका दीजिए, make them aware that there is a law, उनको बोल देना, all I want is fine if I have made a mistake, tell them to tell me in nice words, not to hit me. मेरी गलती भी है ना तो उनको बता देना कि मुझे सिर्फ बोलो, मारो मत, पीटो मत. Now where is this expectation coming from? और काउंसलिंग में तो हम लोग कहते हैं कि we have to help the person to help himself. Change is nowhere on her horizon कि मुझे बदलना है. Who, me? No, it's the system. And I'm facing the violence because I am powerless. They are being the perpetrators because they are powerful. Now I have come to you because I want to beat that power with a higher power. Because you at an organization or as a counselor or as a therapist, you stand for a higher power, because again, you have network with the police, with the lawyers, everything. So you indicate or you stand a power. So if she has to beat this power at home, she has to approach a higher power. Idea is not to really bring change in herself, to stand for herself. No. She doesn't want that. All she wants is to be in the, in Marathi I'll tell you, because it is, that's what I started thinking about. That when normally counselors, psychotherapists or even social workers, we take that stand of human rights and how it is wrong, we are almost negating her. We are almost telling her that whatever you did all these years was dead wrong. इतना सफ़र किया, कितना गलत किया तुमने. Now if those have been her navigation points out of which her narrative has come up, we are telling her keep aside those navigation points. Now come up with your own biography. She has no clue. उसके pointers क्या होंगे? उसको तो एक ही मालूम है, power game. एक ही मालूम है, power, being powerless and being powerful. तो अब उसको ये कैसे पता? And that's the reason her expectations are simple. And when we take this stand and we ask her to change, she stands at a crossroad. In Marathi I always say, न्याय का नातं. Whether you want justice or you want a relationship, and she chooses relationship. Actually, she comes to us expecting, मला नात्यात न्याय पाहिजे. I want justice within relationship. I don't want to choose. And how can we really help her if we really take this stand, and if we are standing on the opposite side, sitting on the opposite side of the table, how will we be able to really help her? Because as I said, खुद में बदलाव लाना तो उसके दूर दूर तक उसको दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है. For her, she is suffering because other people have power and are not considerate enough and are not sensitive enough. Otherwise, her role of being subservient to man, she has accepted that. गांधारी मॉडल तो हम लोगों ने कब का एक्सेप्ट कर दिया है, that it's a dependency model. Even young girls, when I talk to, whether they would be earning, whether they would be doing a job or getting into any professional, many a times I get this answer ki, no, that depends. ये जवाब मुझे किसी लड़के से नहीं आता है. See, still look at the way we are really conceiving these relationships and the dynamics of that relationship. एक बहुत बड़ा मैट्रिमोनियल साइट है, वो बीच में 8-10 बरस हो गए बीच में आए थे और मुझे कहने लगे कि अभी ये जो एक्सपेक्टेशंस चेंज हो रहे हैं ना, उसके बारे में हमें रिसर्च करना है, तो हमें गाइडलाइंस दीजिए. तो मैंने कहा कि पहले ये चेंज हुए हैं या नहीं, इसका तो पहले पता कराते हैं, फिर देखते हैं. सो आई आस्क्ड देम जस्ट 3 criteria: looks, appearance, education and income. What does a boy expect from a girl and what does a girl expect from a boy? उसके सिर्फ प्रायोरिटी लिस्ट मुझे बताओ. Boys' expectation from girls. Appearance number 1, education number 2, income number 3. Girls' expectation from boys, income number 1, education number 2, appearance number 3. कहाँ पे बदला है? नहीं बदला है. And if we are entering with this historical unequal relationship, हम इक्वालिटी की बात कहाँ से कर रहे हैं? So the basic principle of counseling start from where the client is. तो कहाँ पे है? यहाँ से हमें इंटरवीन करना है तो शुरुआत यहाँ से करनी पड़ती है. ये नहीं कि तुम्हें कहाँ होना चाहिए. Because we are also products of that patriarchy. If we really look into ourselves, if we really introspect, we understand. And if we really analytically look at our choices, we do understand. As girls or as women, what are the privileges that we have had of making certain choices? And of course, what are the vulnerabilities? In the same way, men also have, patriarchy definitely gives them some privileges, but also makes them vulnerable. कल ही मेरे पास एक कपल आया था काउंसलिंग के लिए परसों, एंड दे हैड गॉन फॉर सम हाउस वार्मिंग पार्टी, ओके, टू अ फ्रेंड हु हैड रियली बॉट अ न्यू ऑलमोस्ट अ पैलेशियल हाउस, और बहुत अच्छा इंटीरियर और ये किया था. पहले तो ये मैरिटल डिस्कॉर्ड इसलिए था क्योंकि द हस्बैंड लेफ्ट द हाउस 6 months बैक एंड ही वाज नॉट गिविंग द मनी एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स. द wife was a homemaker all these years and all those things typically. So ye make or break pe aaya tha. And this husband was complaining that I have never felt loved, cared for, valued. Okay, I never was a priority to her. Okay, then he had a list of charge sheet against her, which usually is. दोनों लोगों का मैरिटल डिस्कॉर्ड में दोनों का एक ओपिनियन एक जैसा होता है, दैट द अदर पर्सन शुड चेंज. दैट्स वेयर दे एग्री द मोस्ट एंड दैट वुड बी द एंड ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम. लेकिन ये नहीं समझ में आता कि सॉल्यूशन टू माय प्रॉब्लम लाइज आउटसाइड मी इज बेसिकली अ फॉल्टी डिजाइन. इट हैज नेवर वर्क फॉर एनीवन इन दिस वर्ल्ड, सो इट्स नॉट लाइकली टू वर्क फॉर अस आल्सो. सो कमिंग बैक टू ही सेड कि कल ये हम लोग वो हाउस वार्मिंग पार्टी पे गए थे, वो सब घर देख के इसने कहा कितना अच्छा घर है, मेरा घर तो अब मुझे क्रैप लग रहा है. एंड ही गॉट हर्ट. ओके, कमेंट किसने की थी? घर पे की थी. एंड ही गेव मी एज एन एविडेंस ऑफ हाउ आई एम टोल्ड एवरी टाइम आई एम गुड फॉर नथिंग. अंडरस्टैंड दिस सटल डायनामिक्स. घर पे कमेंट, घर किसने बनाया? इसने बनाया. अब ये घर अगर क्रैप है तो बनाने वाला ऑटोमेटिकली, दैट्स वेयर इट हर्टेड हिम. सो दीज आर द वल्नरेबिलिटीज ऑल्सो विच आर एन आउटकम ऑफ पेट्रियार्की. सो मेन को सिर्फ प्रिविलेजेस नहीं मिलते हैं. And that's exactly the second point in intervening when it comes to domestic violence, that don't accuse them of being perpetrator. Normally when I talk with the NGO workers, when I talk about this in during TOTs, the immediate question that I get एकदम rebounds होके आता है कि which means you are justifying violence. No. See, that it is explicable doesn't mean it is acceptable. लेकिन उसको अगर कटहरे में खड़े करेंगे तो वो नहीं आएगा, और वो अगर नहीं आएगा तो वो वायलेंस रुकेगा नहीं. एंड देन एज आई सेड, द वुमन ऑलवेज स्टैंड्स ऑन दिस क्रॉस रोड की जस्टिस चाहिए या रिलेशनशिप चाहिए. उसको रिलेशनशिप चाहिए होता है, और वो तुम्हारे पास आती है सिर्फ इसलिए भाई थोड़ा वायलेंस कम हो सके, जितना टॉलरेबल लिमिट्स में आ सके तो देखो, दैट्स ऑल आई वांट. और हम उसको बता रहे कि लॉ है, राइट्स है, ये है, वो है, उसको कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. बट इफ वी रियली वांट टू मेक दैट रिलेशनशिप हेल्दी, फॉर एनी रिलेशनशिप टू बी हेल्दी, केयर, शेयर, रिस्पेक्ट, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, पीरियड. और कुछ नहीं चाहिए, which is lacking in this relationship. Now the man, because of his idea of being man enough, has to be supreme, has to be in control of everything, has to be superior, and if his superiority, supremacy is challenged, there is likelihood of violence. मीडिया पे भी जो रिश्ते दिखाए जाते हैं, इफ यू लुक एट इट, दोज आर द स्टीरियोटिपिकल. मुझे तो हमेशा लगता है कि ये काले चक्र उल्टा घुमा रहे ये लोग, एंड दे हैव मैक्सिमम टीआरपी. अगेन, this is something that needs to be looked at as a counselor, as a psychologist, because this is a social phenomena we cannot overlook. Because people are getting threatened कि ये नहीं चलेगा तो क्या चलेगा. तो जो पुराना है ना उसको स्ट्रॉन्गर करते जाओ. That's the message we are getting everywhere from all the social media. And that's out of the fear कि if this gets disrupted, what is it that it's going to really replace? वो पता ही नहीं है. क्योंकि healthy relationships कैसे करना है अगर हमें पता नहीं है, इक्वालिटी के ऊपर बेस्ड रिलेशनशिप कैसे बनाने